Chapter 22, Baseball and Braiding. Before bed on Sunday night, Janie always took a shower and washed her hair. Lately, she'd been weaving it into 6 braids while it was still damp so that she could have wavy hair in the morning. Janie's hair was usually stick straight like Dad's and Bat's, though hers was a dark, dark brown instead of black. When she came out of the bathroom in her pajamas, carrying a wide-toothed comb and 6 hair ties, Bat asked, "Can I braid it?" "I can do it myself," Janie said. "Let him try," Dad said from the couch where he sat watching baseball on TV. He had an orange and black baseball cap on his head because tonight he was rooting for the Orioles. He had a collection of caps for all the teams he liked, and whenever one of his teams was playing, he'd select the right baseball cap from the top shelf in his closet and wear it for the whole game. Dad said he didn't believe in luck, but it sort of seemed like he did. "Okay," said Janie, "but if you mess up the braids, I'm going to redo them." She sat cross-legged on the floor, facing the TV. Bat sat behind her on the couch next to Dad. Janie handed him the comb. Bat started combing at the bottom the way Janie had taught him so he wouldn't pull on her hair. He worked out all the little tangles with the teeth of the comb as he made his way up toward the top of her head. Soon he could pull the comb straight through her hair from the very top to the end without snagging at all. Then he divided her hair into 6 sections, 2 in the front, 2 in the middle, and 2 in the back. The back 2 sections looked a little thicker than the others, but Bat didn't think Janie would notice. He picked up the front left section of her hair and started braiding. "Go, go, go!" Dad yelled at the TV. One of the baseball players had made a good hit and was running as fast as he could around the bases. "I think baseball is the most boring game you watch," Janie said, "even more boring than football." "That's because you won't let me explain it to you," Dad said, adjusting his cap. "If you understand the game, it's fascinating." Bat reached the bottom of the first section of hair and wound a pink elastic band around its end. The braid wasn't perfectly neat and straight like the braids Janie did, but it wasn't bad. Moving on to the other front section, Bat focused on making the second braid even better than the first. "Make sure you're braiding it tight," Janie said, "so it's really wavy." "I am," Bat said. Bat loved braiding Janie's hair, even though he usually wasn't very good at hand things. He liked the feeling of the damp, wet hair. He liked organizing it into a series of smaller, neatly contained braids. He liked feeling close to Janie like this, by helping her and touching her, without having to have a big conversation that might turn into a fight. Getting along with people was hard for Bat. Figuring out what they meant when they said something or when they made certain faces at him. People were complicated, but braiding was easy. There, he'd finished the second braid and wrapped the end of this one in a dark green elastic. Janie reached up and touched the braid, then pulled it in front of her face so she could see it. "Not bad," she said. "Yes!" Dad yelled. He stood up from the couch, grabbing the cap from his head and waving it around. Was it the same as being home? Mom wasn't here. Thor wasn't here. But maybe every other weekends could be okay. Chapter 23, Windows. Some days, Bat was the first person awake. It didn't happen often because Mom was a morning person. Usually when Bat woke up, he went straight into the kitchen to find Mom sitting at a table with a cup of coffee and a book. But every now and then, Bat awoke to a completely quiet house, a sleeping house. Thursday was one of those mornings. Bat woke up suddenly and completely to a still dark sky outside his window. He blinked and sat up, slipped his feet into his slippers, took the skunk sling from the doorknob where he had hung it the night before, and went into the living room. The living room windows faced the front yard. Bat could make out the shape of the big oak tree on the lawn. It was a darker shadow against the velvety early morning sky. He went straight to Thor's enclosure and found the kit tucked in his sleeping corner, surrounded by the rice-filled socks that made a nice padded nook. He stroked Thor's back, feeling the rise and fall of his sleeping breath, before gently scooping him up. Thor let out a little high-pitched yawning sound, his tiny paws swimming through the air as Bat settled him into the sling. Once inside, Thor rustled around for a moment before quieting back down. In the kitchen, Bat opened the refrigerator as quietly as he could and retrieved the formula. He filled the syringe and held it under a stream of hot water to warm it up. Thor could smell the formula. Bat could tell because he wriggled around in his pouch. "It's coming, little guy," Bat said. When the formula was warm, he went back into the living room and curled up on the window bench. Already the sky was changing. It was still dark, but now Bat could make out the branches of the tree. He heard the very earliest morning birds, the ones that sang each day as the sky began to lighten. Gently, Bat reached into the pouch and pulled out the skunk kit. It was too dark to see clearly, but Bat didn't want to startle him by turning on a lamp. So he brought the syringe down to Thor's face and let the skunk find the tip by smell. As Thor had his breakfast, the sky turned violet and pink, then orangey red. The tree's trunk lightened from black to brown, and its leaves transformed to green. The first birds called louder, waking up their friends, and they became a chorus of song. Bat looked down to see if Thor had finished his formula and gasped in surprise. The two tight slits that had been closed since Mom first brought him home were open. Bat could see Thor's eyes. They were the darkest black Bat had ever seen. "Hey there," Bat cooed down at Thor. "Good morning, little kit." Thor kept licking at the tip of the syringe, but his quick pink tongue hesitated just a bit when Bat spoke. Maybe he was listening. Maybe he understood. Bat stroked back the soft black and white fuzz on Thor's little forehead. "I see you," he said. "Do you see me?" Mom emerged from her bedroom, tying the belt of her robe. "Bat," she said, "you're up early." "Mom," Bat said, "look, Thor's eyes are open." Mom came over to see. "Look at that," she said, resting her hand on the top of Bat's head and patting his hair just as Bat stroked Thor. "His eyes are beautiful, Mom," Bat said. "Don't you think his eyes are beautiful?" Mom sat down on the window seat next to Bat. "I think that's the first time I've ever heard you mention someone's eyes," she said. "Most eyes are boring," Bat said, "but Thor's eyes are amazing. Look, they're the color of outer space. They're open." "Bat," Mom said, "what color are my eyes?" "Brown," Bat answered, still staring at the skunk kit. Droplets of formula hung from a little black and white hairs all around his mouth. "Nope," Mom said, "they're hazel." Well, this got Bat's attention. "Really?" He looked up and stared at Mom's face. Her eyes were golden brown with little flecks of green and yellow in them. "They look like marbles," Bat said. "I never noticed." "Well, you've never been all that interested in people's eyes." Bat shrugged. "I never thought about it," he said. "Some people say you can tell a lot about a person by looking into their eyes," Mom said. "What do you think about that?" Bat thought about it. "I don't get it," he said. "If I want to know something about a person, I ask. I think you can tell more about people from what they say than from their eyes." Said Mom. "You have an interesting way of seeing the world, Bat." Bat stared deep into Thor's space black eyes. He tried to see what he could learn from them. He looked first into the left eye, then into the right, then to the left again. "It's hard to look into two eyes at the same time," he said. "Which one am I supposed to look in?" "I don't think it matters. Try looking into my eyes," Mom said, "and see what you can learn about me." Bat tucked Thor back into the pouch. Mom took the syringe and set it down. She took Bat's hands into hers and smiled at him. Bat smiled back, and then he tried to see what Mom's eyes could tell him. The left eye had 3 more flecks of green than the right eye. The right eye had 1 more fleck of yellow. The black points in the middle were exactly the same size. Her eyes were shiny. "Hazel's cool," Bat said. "It's like a rainbow of all the boring colors." "Funny, Bat," Mom said. "Do you know what I see when I look into your eyes?" "Brown and black," Bat said, "with white all around." "Yes," said Mom, "I do see that. But I also see your sweetness and your thoughtful nature and your busy, busy mind." Bat looked away. It was uncomfortable to let anyone look into his eyes for too long. It made him feel kind of itchy and shy. "You can tell all that by looking in my eyes?" "Yes," she said. She leaned forward and kissed Bat's forehead. "I see all of that and more." Chapter 24, A Reply. Bat, said Mr. Grayson as the students filled into the classroom, you got an email from Dr. Jerry Dragoo. He wrote back, Bat said, his heart beating faster. There were only a few days left until Thor was supposed to go to the rescue center, and he had almost given up hope. What did he say? You can read it at recess, Mr. Grayson said. It's a nice email. I want to read it now. All the other kids were at their desk, but Bat was still standing in the aisle. He felt his hands pull up tight around his sides, the way he did when he was excited. At recess, Bat, said Mr. Grayson. Bat hated waiting. He hated waiting. It was stupid to wait for something if there was no good reason that it couldn't happen now. Who cares if class started a few minutes late if it meant that he could read his email? A real-life skunk expert had written to him. That was certainly more important than anything Mr. Grayson had planned right now. Had a real-life skunk expert ever written to Mr. Grayson? Almost certainly not. Mr. Grayson, I think you should let me read my email now, Bat said. Bat, Mr. Grayson answered, sometimes we have to wait. It's good practice to delay gratification. Bat didn't really know what Mr. Grayson meant by that, but he knew it meant that Mr. Grayson wasn't going to let him read that email right now. He wanted to insist, and he would insist if he thought he could change Mr. Grayson's mind. But Mr. Grayson looked serious, so Bat reluctantly went to his seat. Too bad, said Israel, putting down the book he had been reading. Don't make fun of me, Bat yelled. Whoa, dude, Israel said. I wasn't making fun of you. Bat, said Mr. Grayson, coming over his desk. What on earth is the matter? Israel was making fun of me, Bat said. I was not, said Israel. I just said it's too bad that Bat can't read his email right now. You don't really think it's too bad, Bat said. He kept his eyes on the surface of his desk, running his gaze over the wood grain. You don't know what I think, Bat, said Israel. You don't know everything. Bat, said Mr. Grayson, putting his hand on Bat's shoulder. The weight of his hand felt good. It helped Bat to feel like he was sitting in his seat, but he wasn't going to fly away. Try to give Israel the benefit of the doubt, okay? If he says he was being sincere, believe him. Bat nodded, but he didn't look up. Israel went back to his book. For what it's worth, Bat, said Mr. Grayson in a quieter voice, I think Israel was being kind. I think he'd like to be your friend. Then Mr. Grayson took his hand off Bat's shoulder and returned to the front of the room. Now Bat wasn't just thinking about the email from Dr. Jerry Dragoo. He was also thinking about whether Israel wanted to be his friend. He thought about how Israel had asked him if he wanted to play Foursquare, and how he had said hello outside of the sugar shack. Then he thought about the other kids in class looking at him right now, and he thought about Thor's eyes, and he thought about the windy day outside. It was too much to think about all at once, and his skin began to feel prickly and too tight. But he couldn't take off his skin, so instead he reached into his backpack for his earmuffs and slipped them on. The classroom noise around him faded, and Bat's skin calmed down. Bat looked at the clock above the classroom door. It was 8:55. Recess was at 10:15. That was exactly 1 hour and 20 minutes away. He could wait that long. He didn't like it, but he could do it. Time was a funny thing. Sometimes an hour and 20 minutes didn't feel very long at all, like when Bat was watching YouTube videos about animals. And sometimes, like when Dad was watching baseball on TV, an hour and 20 minutes felt like 20 years. But that day, the hour and 20 minutes between 8:55 and 10:15 felt like 20 baseball games. At last, Mr. Grayson said, "Okay, gang, go play." The kids shoved back their chairs and headed for the door. Bat pulled off his earmuffs and went to Mr. Grayson's desk. "It's recess," he said. "Yes, Bat, it sure is," said Mr. Grayson. He opened his laptop. "Can I read the email too?" Israel asked. He hadn't gone outside with the other kids. "Why?" asked Bat. "Because I'm curious. You've been talking about Dr. Jerry Dragoo nonstop." "That wasn't true." "Was it?" "Maybe it was true." "Okay," said Bat. "But no making fun." "I wasn't making fun before," Israel said, "and I won't now." "Here you go, gentlemen," Mr. Grayson said. He clicked on the top of the message in his inbox. The subject line was, regarding question about a skunk, baby skunk. Then he stood up so that Bat could have his chair. When you're done reading your email, just close the laptop and come join us outside, he said. Then he headed out to the playground. Bat sat down. He could feel Israel standing beside him, reading over his shoulder. The email read, Dear Bat, I am very interested in skunks, as you know. I can tell that you feel very attached to the kit, and I don't blame you. Baby skunks are adorable. But the question of whether you should keep him as a pet is a complicated one, even if your mom feels reasonably sure that he is disease-free. All pets require a huge commitment of time, energy, and usually money. Skunks are no different. In fact, keeping a skunk as a pet is much more challenging than keeping a dog or a cat. Skunks are not pets by nature. They are wild animals. And from my many years of experience, I can tell you that most people don't know what they're getting into. It's very easy to fall in love with a baby skunk, but it's difficult to truly be a good caretaker to a skunk. Most people would be better off with a dog. Still, this skunk kit has come into your life, and for at least the next few weeks, you and your mother must work to be the best caretakers you can be. Should you keep the kit? Should you give him to the rescue people? I don't know the answer because I don't know you, and I don't know your kit. But it sounds like for now, the kit is right where it needs to be, and I trust that you will take good care of it. Sincerely, Jerry Dragoo, Ph.D., Dragoo Institute for the Betterment of Skunks and Skunk Reputations. That's too bad, said Israel. What's too bad, asked Bat. That skunk guy doesn't think you should keep the kit. Well, that's not what he said Bat. Well, he didn't say he'd tell your mom to keep them. He didn't say that skunks make good pets. That's true, said Bat. But he didn't say we shouldn't keep Thor either. He said that a good caretaker makes a good pet. So all I have to do is be the best caretaker in the world and convince my mom to let me keep raising him. I can do that. Bat closed Mr. Grace's laptop, absolutely determined to become the best caretaker that a skunk had ever had. Can I come over sometime? Israel asked. Why? Said Bat. I don't know, said Israel. Hang out and maybe meet Thor. It's okay with me, Bat answered. I'll have to ask my mom.